Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you for tuning into Tethered, Being Connected to Jesus, a podcast that exists to help followers of Jesus abide in Him daily in various areas of life in order to enjoy Him and glorify Him forever. I am your host, Joey Moralez. This is Season 3 of the podcast, dedicated to helping you understand how to exercise, that is, work out the spiritual disciplines in your daily walk with the Lord. The next 7 episodes are going to be bonus episodes of Tethered. The format for these episodes will be different than previous episodes. So in these next 7 episodes, you're going to hear my friend Noah Turner, who has agreed to interview me and my good friend SJ Gottschamer about college ministry, how we were impacted by college ministry, what enabled us to work in college ministry, and abiding in Christ. Because of this interview, the release schedule has temporarily changed since the total recording ended up being over 3 hours long. Hence why this interview is spread out over 7 parts. The normal release schedule is every 2 weeks, but for this specific interview, beginning with part 1 that's being released today, parts will be released weekly until part 7. After part 7, the normal bi-weekly schedule will resume. With that, we hope you're encouraged by these next few episodes. There was a lot that was said. We hope that this interview enables you, dear listener, to be tethered to Jesus. For part 1, Noah asked SJ and I to share about our testimonies about how we both came to a saving relationship with Jesus. Without further ado, here is part 1 of this conversation.
Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into Tethered. My name is Noah Turner. I'm a friend of Joey's and I am today's guest host. A little bit about me, I'm a former college student. I went to the University of Missouri, Kansas City for software engineering, and that is where I met Joey. I met Joey as a part of a student ministry, and I've known him for about 3 or 4 years now. Joey can correct me later if that's wrong. I was interviewed on Tethered in Season 1 for the episode Students Assembled about college students' involvement within a local church, and I'm excited to interview Joey and SJ here today. We're going to be taking a break from discussing the spiritual disciplines directly in these next few episodes. However, since this podcast is about abiding, we wanted to take some time to share about how abiding in Christ fuels people who work in vocational ministry. However, we will ask our guests about how they implement certain spiritual disciplines in their life in order to help them in their vocational ministry work. That being said, Joey's asked me to interview both him and his friend, SJ Gottschamer, about their role in collegiate ministry. I'm honored to be interviewing them both and looking forward to facilitating this conversation about how they work out their spiritual disciplines in order to live their calling. So, to move on to our guests, I have here Joey Moralez.
How's it going, Noah?
Great, how are you?
I'm better not deserved, sir. Thanks for interviewing me and SJ.
It's my pleasure. So what do you do besides campus ministry, Joey? Let's
see. So, besides campus ministry, I work at this place. You might have heard of it before. It's a place that serves chicken. It's not Raising Cane's. It's not churches.
Slim Chickens?
No, it's not Slim Chickens.
Zaxby's?
No, it's not Zaxby's. It's called Chick-fil-A, the Lord's Chicken.
Nice.
Yeah, the Lord's Chicken. So I worked there in Liberty, Missouri. I used to work at the one in Lee's Summit some time ago, but recently moved to the one up in Liberty because I now live north of the river, the Missouri River in Kansas City, Missouri. And so, but yeah, I do that. I'm just a normal team member there. I get to work with a great crew, so really enjoy working with them. Shout out to the crew if you're listening to this.
Awesome. Yeah, and real quick, 3 fun facts, Joey.
Well, there are some fun facts about me that I really might surprise some of you, but one of them is I actually got to meet Patrick Mahomes.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's a funny story. I was working for this internet service provider years ago, and there was this guy that came in to get what's called a self-install kit. And he came in with his younger brother, and I had no idea who these guys were. I thought they were just dudes. But all of the employees, like, they were just waiting on the side. They were the only customers in the place. And they're like, Joey, do you not know what that is? I'm like, why do you keep doing that? I'm like, I'm just trying to help a guest here, or a customer. Mm-hmm. And so I helped this guy set up his self-install kit, and he walks away. He leaves the parking lot. And my coworkers come to me like, Joey, do you know who you just helped? I'm like, no. Was I supposed to? you just helped out Patrick Mahomes. I'm like, who's Patrick Mahomes? Like, you gotta be kidding me. You don't know who Patrick Mahomes is? I'm like, I have no idea who you're talking about. That's the Chiefs quarterback, bro. I'm like, oh. So I was like dumbfounded and like, oh my gosh. Wow. How could I miss out on an opportunity? I could have gotten an autograph, but that's all right. I'm sure you appreciated that I did. But that's the funnest story I have. Another thing that I have a fun fact about is I love collecting stuff. But I especially like collecting things like these Starbucks mugs. They're called the Been There, You Are Here series. So I have 44 of them right now. But I hope to get to 48, Lord willing, here in May as I prepare to travel to Massachusetts.
I've seen the collection. It's impressive.
Thank you. And then I'm also the oldest of 4. And also I forgot to mention this too, what I do besides campus ministry. I do videography for fun. And so it's a hobby I just got into about 2 years ago. And then I'm also going to be a part-time student at Midwestern Seminary here in Kansas City beginning this fall.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, well, thanks for sharing, Joey. And we'll go over to our other guest, SJ. SJ, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yes, you did, Noah.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. And now what about you? What do you do besides campus ministry?
Yeah, so truthfully, I do collegiate ministry basically full-time now. But and this is more of a recent development, not current, I suppose, but for the past few years, I myself have been a student as well. I know Joey just mentioned that. But instead of Midwestern, I've been a student at Calvary University pursuing an interdisciplinary degree in Bible and theology and intercultural studies. So that took up a bulk of my time in the past few years or so. And yeah, that's probably like one of the more predominant hats I would say that I've had in my life, in addition to just being really involved in my local church and those kinds of things.
Cool.
But, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And what about 3 fun facts?
Yeah. So I'll just rattle off the first 3 that seem to come to mind most often. But I'm one of 5 kids. For those of you who might be listening, I'm the middle child. So yeah, we always get a lot of comments saying that we're the weird ones, which would be true. Joey, wouldn't you say that's true?
Yeah.
I'm a plant mom, so I have no cats or kids, but I'm a plant mom through and through. And then I am a thrifter, so you can find me at Goodwill on weekends for sure. So.
No, I forgot to mention this, but I'm also I'm the oldest of 4.
Yeah, actually, I think you mentioned it. I think you did.
Okay. Yeah. I forgot to mention that.
There you go. So, 1 oldest, 1 middle. Nice. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, so I guess what we're going to do for the rest of this episode is we're going to be sort of bouncing back and forth between Joey and SJ for a couple of different questions. So I'll start over with Joey. What is your story?
Wow. Where do I even begin? Yeah. It's interesting that you asked that question because, like, I thought about this as I was preparing for this podcast. I remember interviewing my friend Nick Pearson a couple of years ago about how important it is to share your story with people, because that is a way that you can proclaim the gospel. And so I'm honored to be sharing my story with you all listening to this. But for those who don't know, I actually did not grow up in a Christian home. My biological dad and mom came from El Salvador. They immigrated to the United States, Los Angeles specifically, right before I was born. And so I was born down in Los Angeles, California. And so the wildfires that happened recently, that was really sad that my hometown went through that. But yeah, my biological dad gave birth to me and my sister. And then after my sister was born, he abandoned me and my mom and my sister. And so then from there, my stepdad came into the picture. He immigrated from Guatemala to LA. And, from there came my brother and my youngest sister. And so that's how we have the 4 of us. And we moved to Kansas City when I was about 6 years old. And we've been here ever since. And so, but yeah, growing up, my stepfather was a person that was very abusive in the sense of like physically, verbally, emotionally abusive. And I've learned since becoming a believer that he himself has also suffered abuses like that by his parents, which I did not know that at the time growing up. And so he didn't necessarily know how to raise children because it wasn't his experience at all. And so, but at the same time, I was also a very rebellious kid. I talked back to my parents a lot as a teenager. But I also, like, through this experience with my stepdad, I felt like I wasn't worthy. And that was further escalated when I found out that my real biological father abandoned me. So I had this idea of, like, I'm not worthy, I'm not wanted, why am I even here, kind of thing. And so I was experiencing so much brokenness in my home that I felt like no one wanted me, and I felt like I couldn't be loved by my stepdad. So I tried whatever I could to earn it. And so that's what led me to be disobedient, because I felt like I had to please him. And so when I didn't do what he asked me to, he would, of course, discipline me. I'm not going to get into the details of that. It's too emotionally scarring, but that's just my experience as a child. And then in school, it just continued to escalate. In school, I was bullied. I was made fun of for being kind of a shorter guy and, kind of a wimpy person. And so people would just give me a difficult time, and I just felt like I couldn't belong anywhere. Didn't really have that many friends growing up. And so this idea of course, experiencing abuse at home and being bullied at school just fed this notion like, man, I am not wanted by anyone. And so this idea carried into middle school, high school. I, tried everything that I could to try to earn people's approval, try to please people. And so for me, like, I pursued sports, academics, I pursued women, just like anybody in middle school and high school would do. That was my life, because I was trying to find this sense of belonging, and I was trying to find this sense of identity. And so that was what I lived. And in high school, my freshman year, I went to 3 different high schools. And so for me, didn't really click in with a certain group of people and, try to fit in. And when I was 14, my freshman year of high school, I actually thought about committing suicide because I was so broken. I was so feeling unworthy that I felt like, why does it even matter? Why am I even here? Why do I even exist? But I remember something in my conscience telling me that I shouldn't pursue that because there was a far better life for me. But I didn't realize at the time that the Lord was using that to propel me to know him. And so I'm glad I didn't go through a suicide. Obviously, I'm here. But yeah, I really thought about taking my own life because I just didn't feel worthy. And so high school goes by. Like I mentioned before, I went to 3 different high schools because we moved around a lot as a family. And then I went off to college at Wichita State University in Wichita, Kansas. And my main goal was to experience this new profound freedom that I had. I wanted to get away from my parents. Like, I did not like living with them. I didn't really want them in my life. I really had this distaste for my parents. And before I talk about my college experience, I think it's appropriate to bring this up too. Before I went off to college, right after I graduated high school, I met this girl at a conference. And I got to know this girl at this conference, and then she lived in a different state. And so we stayed in touch over Facebook. And I would just lie about myself because, again, in that time period, I was wanting to do whatever it took to please people. And so I got to know this person, make up some ridiculous lies about myself. And my only main purpose with this relationship was try to, sleep with her, because at the time, that's what I thought it took to become a man, because of just my saturation in, like, culture. Like, pop culture teaches that if you lose your virginity, you become a man, and that's just what I thought would happen. And so I'm just thankful to the Lord that he kept me from doing things with this woman that would have ended up very negatively, but I still regret the fact that I got close. And, my parents didn't know that I went to go see this girl. She lived in a different state. And so she found out that I was lying to her. Her parents found out that I wanted to do things with her, and they sent me back to Kansas City. And yeah, that was hard. When my mom found out, she made me call this particular girl, and we broke up from there, and that devastated me. Like, it was my first ever relationship, and I felt like my unworthiness just sank to an all-time low. Because I continued to think that my worth is found in the things of this world. And so I went off to college like this. And like this girl found out that I was also trying to manipulate her out of a different relationship she was in as soon as I got out of my relationship with her. And I was just awful to her. Awful. And this was all took place during my first semester in college. And so I only say all this because, like, you might be listening to this and you might be thinking, like, God can't save someone like me. Let me get to the rest of my story and I'll show you that God is so gracious. And so I go off to college. I, experience this new profound freedom. I begin to experiment with hookah. I can begin to experiment with marijuana once, and I hated it, but also like partied. I wanted to fit in with the crowd. I would go to fraternity parties to try to fit in with those crowds, and I just found myself feeling more empty. I would get drunk, and I just felt this sense of emptiness. Like, why do I feel so down? And I just lived with this sense of purposelessness. And so from there, I remember one particular evening that semester where I just was so drunk that I fell into the snow, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know if this is the life I should live. And little did I know that the Lord was beginning to orchestrate his work in saving me. Because around this time, I had a friend that I've gotten to know. I just went into his dorm room one night, and then from there, met this other guy, whose name I will share. His name's Joe. He's actually been on this podcast before. He was in the episode, We're in the Sharing Business. And so I got to meet Joe, and Joe and his friend invited me to this worship gathering at a nearby church. And I went to this church, never really stepped inside a Protestant church before. And so I got a chance to experience that, and that was interesting for me because I grew up nominal Catholic, and so my parents, we went to church every now and then, but for me, church was just this thing that we went to just because we had to do it. We checked it off the list, and so I only went because my parents made us go. It was not a good experience for me, but all I knew about God was we just need to be good people, not be bad people. We need to make sure that we're doing good things in life, not bad things in life. You need to earn his love, and if you do something bad, you'll lose his love. That was my only understanding of who God was. I did not know anything else. And so I went to this worship gathering, and I experienced something profoundly different than my experiences growing up going to church. And so I got to see young adults holding up their hands high. I got to see a dude in a wheelchair, like he was an older guy. And he got up and preached just a wonderful sermon about the gospel. I do remember that, but the fact that he did it in a wheelchair and he was physically disabled, but he still had that passion to preach the gospel. It really resonated with me just how people wanted to be there. And this was not like your typical like concert type of worship service. This is just people playing the guitar, drums, not a lot of lights, but people were just enjoying being in the presence of God. And so for me, it was a very unique experience. And I told Joe and his friend, like, what is this? This is so weird. I've never been a part of this, but I like it. And so from there, Joe and his friend and I, we decided to form a Bible study. And a lot of me actually didn't want to do it because I've never really picked up a Bible. Before this incident happened, before this study happened, I got a chance to walk into student union because I was trying to reconnect with my Catholicism, and I just wanted a Bible. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to get a Bible, but we'll see if I can get one. The next day, literally, I go into the student union, and there's this table that says free Bibles. I'm like, whoa, that's crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah, and the guy who gave me the Bible, I'll share more about who he is later, but he's like, I'll give you a Bible if you come to our Bible study. I was so scared. I didn't go to the Bible study because I was like, I don't know who you are. And then,
You took the Bible, but you didn't go?
No, I took the Bible and I didn't go, but I got a free Bible out of it. The Lord used it because I had that same Bible when I went to this worship gathering.
Wow.
And I used that Bible to actually go through my first ever Bible study. And so Joe, his friend, and we decided to do early morning Bible study. And that's when I began to learn through the book of Romans who God truly is as revealed in the scriptures. And I've never heard anything like this before. That God is holy, that God is righteous, that God is a father, he's a king, he's a savior, he is sovereign. I've never heard that word before, and I had to act like, what does that word mean? I don't know what that means. And so begin to understand my condition as a man, that I'm a sinner, that I have rebelled against God. And I began to learn, I was rebellious against my parents. And I was still rebelling against my parents during that time too. And I began to learn that everything that I did that was wrong was the result of sin. But also, I understood a little bit more deeply why I was abused, because I was sinned against. And then from there, I began to learn who Jesus was. All I knew about Jesus up until this point was what I saw in the Hispanic channels like your Telemundo and Univision. What they'll do is they'll showcase a Jesus movie during Christmas season and Easter. That was my only knowledge of Jesus. I'm like, okay, this guy on TV that is very important in Catholicism. That's all I knew about Jesus. And from there, I began to learn who Jesus truly was. The God-man. God becoming a man. Taking on flesh. The Word become flesh and dwelt among us. And I have never heard of anything like this before. That he came to take the punishment of my sin and to take on the wrath of God that I deserve. And that he did it because he wanted to reconcile me to God. I've never heard anything like that before. And to me, that news captivated my attention so much because I knew I was longing for something more. And I never knew I would find it in Christianity. Because my view of Christianity at the time was I don't want to be like these religious knuckleheads. And so I was alrighty, I'm becoming one of those knuckleheads. But in all seriousness, I'm really glad that the Lord used that Bible study to further a relationship with Joe. Joe and I started hanging out all the time. We would go to the, student union together. We would study together. We would even hang out together. One particular evening, this was about 15 years ago. He invites me to this event with a sorority. They were doing a fake casino night. And so he came over to my dorm room. I got a chance to iron his clothes to serve him in that way. And we both dressed up really nice and we went to this fake casino night. And that was the first time I actually had someone who really wanted to spend time with me. And that to me spoke volumes. And so from there, we went to this event and then we had a lot of fun. We went to go grab ice cream at a nearby restaurant called Spangles. It's a good place. I highly recommend it. But we went to this restaurant and we grabbed ice cream and we sat in this car for quite a long time. And I just had this sense maybe I should open up to him about everything that I've experienced. He was the first ever person I confided in to actually tell all my problems to, because up until this point, I never actually shared with anybody that I was abused, that I was bullied, that I have rebelled against my parents, and that I've done a lot of awful things with my ex-girlfriend at the time. And I felt like I could trust him. And so I opened up to all this to him, and he essentially repeated the gospel to me again. And I began to ask questions okay, what do I need to do in order to believe this message? What do I need to do to be saved? And just like it says in the Bible, it says, confess with your mouth that Jesus is the Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead and you'll be saved. Like Romans, 10:8-9. And so I knew that I needed to do that, and I wanted to do it because I understood that I was broken and I needed to turn from my sin. And so that night, I gave my life to Jesus. And so I decided it was time to do it. And I'm really glad I did. I mean, there were consequences for my sin. I flunked out of college, tried to go back a few times, and just didn't work out because I didn't want to take on more student loans. Got into massive financial debt because of some choices that I've made. I lost a friendship with someone, with this ex-girlfriend. After I came to faith in Christ, I actually tried to reach out to her for forgiveness. I treated her like a jerk the Christmas before and just told her I didn't want to talk to her anymore, and reached out to her, no response. A year later, no response. And so I'm just really grateful that the Lord in this grace has forgiven me of that. And yeah, it's been a sweet ride with the Lord. There's definitely been challenges in my time walking with Jesus these last 15 years. But God has been so gracious to me in helping me navigate a porn addiction, and helping me navigate issues with my family. I've made a lot of reconciliation with my family. I mean, even 2 years ago, I got to extend vocal forgiveness to my stepdad. I've forgiven in my heart before then, but I actually got to vocalize that. And it was one of those things that just been the most freeing thing that I've ever done. And, you know, I have a good relationship with my family now. And even though the majority of them are not believers, I'm really grateful that the Lord saved me and that he's, you know, using me today to continue to, one, proclaim his gospel, but also just get to enjoy him and treasure him. So that's my story.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joey. Yeah, I've heard your story before, but it's always a joy to hear it again. Now we can hop over to SJ. So I'll ask you the same questions. What is your story?
We'll be back after a brief break. Hey, what's up, everyone? We really appreciate you listening to episodes here on Tethered. If you've been impacted in any way by these episodes, please subscribe to the podcast to keep up to date on when episodes drop. Please give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, if you enjoyed this podcast, would you please consider rating this podcast and leaving us a review? Finally, please share this podcast with your friends and family on social media or however you share things. We would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening to Tethered. Now back to the episode.
Yeah. So I grew up attending church every Sunday. I even had really just the opportunity to have a private Christian education just at my disposal. Like that was something in which I partook in. But I would say that from a really young age, I struggled with a lot of anxiety, something that I didn't even recognize until many, many years later. Just looking back on that. And unfortunately, as a result of that, you know, it manifested itself in a number of ways. Like it came to the surface and, you know, looked like, well, having to release that or cope with it. I turned to things like anger and sexual sin and just those kinds of things as outlets, really. And just to kind of give you like the shorter version of my story, like this was really just the theme, you know, from I would say as early as second grade to just all throughout the course of grade school, middle school, high school, and even the first year or so of junior college. And yeah, it was a really hard time. By the time, for example, I had graduated from high school, I was knee deep in sexual sin addiction. I was just in a really bad relationship, like doing things that, you know, like just were really devastating. I had broken relationship with my parents, absolutely no relationship with them whatsoever. And just felt like I was turning to a number of different means to find for myself like a hope and a peace that really we all know, right, only comes in and through one person. And so by the time I graduated from high school, just being so knee deep in all of this, similarly to what Joey had said earlier, like I felt as though I was at the end of my rope because everything that I was seeking to apply, or all the outs that I was trying to find from this brokenness, were only a temporary means of satisfaction or a temporary solution. And so kind of like think of it this way, like bungee cords. Well, what do we know bungee cords to do? Like, or even think of a rubber band, for example. You stretch it so far, and there comes a point in time in which like it just snaps you back into reality, or at least that's how I felt every time I would look to things to be my outlet. And so but to not get off track or anything of the sort, like I felt very similarly to how Joey explained earlier, just wanting that out so badly and thinking like, well, the only means for that is to have to kind of let go and just pull the plug on myself. And by God's grace, I can say the same thing. Like I'm still here today. And that is only in all glory be to God. But by the time I had started junior college, for those of you who may not be familiar with the just the area in which we're referencing here, so our ministry that we'll reference at a later point in time is in the Kansas City area of Missouri. And so for me personally, just to give even more context to my own story, like I was a student at Metropolitan Community College Longview in Lee Summit, Missouri, for a period of time. And so I remember so vividly stepping into community college thinking, okay, I'm going to get in, I'm going to get out. Like, I just want to get this degree and be done with it, move on to whatever's next. Because, I mean, if we're all being honest, like community colleges get a bad rap. So, or they're looked down upon as though you could be doing something more important with your life. And that was me. Like, I had that perspective. But thinking that was going to be the case, lo and behold, the Lord had other plans. So just to kind of give you that, to kind of foreshadow what's actually going to happen here. So I had been wrestling with just all these particular sin struggles. And I remember it was, in fact, my first semester on campus at MCC Longview, and I had somehow along the way of just getting situated and in the groove of classes, I had met someone who was a part of a club on campus. The club was named InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and this particular person extended me an invite to essentially join them for their weekly Bible study. And believe it or not, I mean, I don't think this is very shocking considering everything, all the backstory that I shared and the things that I was struggling with at the time. I turned this girl down. I said, no, I don't need that, thinking, okay, well, this is just some kind of religious coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. Like, I've been there, I've done that, and it didn't work for me, being in and out of church my whole life. And so fast forward to the end of that particular semester, and for whatever reason, although this isn't by coincidence, like, I was still continuing to apply those same coping mechanisms, and I thought to myself, I was like, you know what else do I have to lose if, these things aren't getting me anywhere? It might be worth a shot, just attending this Bible study, just sitting in to hear what they have to say. And I will say that I had noticed about this girl, just observing her in passing, like throughout the course of the semester, as well as the people that she was around, like just from a distance, mind you, but having the opportunity to observe these people and their behavior and even just the things that they would talk about. Like, I would hear their side conversations whilst in the student center, and it baffled me, the things that they would talk about. It's like they talk about particular struggles that they had. All the while, they exhibited this joy that I didn't understand. Like, where are they getting this whenever they're all the while talking about these struggles that just seem to be so overwhelming? At least I would have said that in my own case. And so I felt compelled to go to this Bible study on campus. It was the last week. It was right before Christmas break. And we had just finished reading through the last chapter of the Gospel according to Mark. And one of the students, his name is Ryan, got up then following the Bible study discussion, and he started to illustrate on the whiteboard what now I understand as a gospel presentation. For those of you who are listening, you might be familiar with the 3 circles visual. It's just a simple method to share the gospel with people and give them something to look at while you're explaining the key components and elements of the gospel. But he walked through the various circles and parts which make up this visual. And he really placed great emphasis on the second circle, which highlights brokenness and just the separation that we experience from God because of our sin, the chasm that exists between us and a holy God, because like sin can't be in the presence of holiness, and he used all of these different examples explaining to how like people try to kind of in what I said earlier, like snap themselves out of brokenness, right? Like to find a way out of that. He started rattling off things, lo and behold, that I myself was doing, like sexual sin, just really wallowing in my pride, things like, partying and just focusing on success and things of that nature. And so he highlighted this and really just placed emphasis then on the fact that, well, there's nothing that one can do to be made right with God in their own ability. And, the second he said that, it washed over me and it kind of hit me really just in a way that I had never heard before. Never, unfortunately, growing up, did I hear just great emphasis placed on sin. And that's a horrible thing, but praise God, it doesn't stop there. Like, that's not where the story ends. He went on to say, well, but, as I've told you the bad news, here, however, is the good news. And the good news being that you might not have a way out of your brokenness, but hey, there's someone who has paved a way for you. And his name is Jesus. And all you need do is repent of your sin. So fancy word for turn away from something and to something, and trust in Jesus by faith. And so that was the first time that I had ever heard the gospel in my life, in such a straightforward way, and really all of the elements combined, like the fact that, hey, I'm not so good of a person, not the great person that I think I am, and the fact that, because of my sin, it took Jesus having to live the life that I failed to live, die a death in my place, and then rise 3 days later to secure that relationship that I could then have with a holy God. And so hearing that, it really hit me in a way that I had never experienced before. I'm thinking in the back of my mind as I walk away from this Bible study, like, 1, how have I never heard it explained this way before? But then 2, just thinking like, what a love that went so far as to give up his own life for me. Like I've always heard it explained, like, oh yeah, Jesus is my savior. But to then think of the fact that he's also Lord over someone's life when they give themselves over to Jesus, like he then becomes their king. And now then is the opportunity to live every day for him. Like it's not just a one-time moment. And thinking on that, it's like in this gospel presentation, Ryan also referenced Romans 5:8, which many of you are probably familiar with, I can imagine. But it says, but God shows his love for us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Like thinking of something that great, I couldn't help but walk away from that conversation and that presentation feeling compelled to want to have to respond. And that was really the invitation that was extended to me that day. And so to kind of fast forward even more, like it wasn't in that particular moment that I gave my life to Christ, but rather by God's grace, like he allowed for me to wrestle with that over the course of the rest of that semester, then the spring semester, as well as the summer months. And by God's grace, like there were various occasions in which people continued to, whether they realized it or not, they were so pivotal just in my coming to know Christ and actually like respond to the gospel. They faithfully shared the gospel with me, thinking in the back of their minds like, oh, this girl already knows it because, well, she's grown up in church her whole life. Surely she knows, surely she has responded to the gospel in repentance and faith, not realizing that couldn't have been further from the truth. And so, in the summer of 2019, it was about August, and I came to the conclusion, I thought in the back of my mind, it's like, I can either have one foot in the Word or one foot in the world. Absolutely not. Like, that's not a doable thing whatsoever. Like, I need to either be all in or all out with Jesus. And just understanding in the back of my mind, like, again, preaching the gospel to myself in the times that even these people weren't, it really, really started to weigh on me. Like, what, if anything, could be keeping me from trusting in Jesus today? And so by God's grace, in the summer of 2019, I finally made that decision. And since then, it seems like everything has changed. I mean, I just felt just this desire, this really deep hunger to want to get into the Word for the first time in my life, like not because anyone was, expecting it of me, but because I knew that's how I could come to know the Lord is in and through His Word. But then even just pursuing discipleship with a girl that, truthfully, someone in which I barely had known at the time, but someone who I knew was faithfully following Jesus. And just the inspiration that her own walk with the Lord, was to me. So just having someone come alongside me as I pursued, Christ-like living, right? And pursued the Lord in all of that. And getting plugged into a local body of believers, like all the things that, are encouraged of believers and necessary for us to, with the theme and the title of this podcast being Tethered, like all these things for the purpose of keeping us tethered to Jesus. So, that's really like the short version, although probably not even short at that because of how long I've gone over.
That's okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, that concludes part 1 of the conversation between me, Noah, and SJ. Thank you so much, dear listener, for listening to me and SJ's stories. We were so honored to share that with you all. Thank you so much for allowing us to share about how we came to know Christ. And so for next week's episode, part 2, SJ and I will be chatting about how we got involved with campus ministry, our experiences in campus ministry, and how our involvement in these campus ministries enabled us to cultivate a deep affection for Jesus. And so please stay tuned next week for part 2 of this conversation. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast. Please follow us on YouTube. We're also on Instagram as well, so please give us a follow there, tethered.podcast. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to these episodes. If you enjoyed these episodes, please share those with your friends and family. We really appreciate you sharing this content so we're able to provide sound content for people who want to grow in their abiding of Jesus. And so we will see you next week, and thank you again for listening to Tethered.
Tethered, Being Connected to Jesus, is a production of Gemstone Studios. To learn more, visit gemstone-studios.com.